date is. And as we come to this point in the series, we've talked about who, we've talked about being satisfied, but I want to talk about, okay, when we look at what God teaches about love and relationships, does that impact what we think it should look like? Now, as we come together today, we come together from all different places. I know some of you are here and you're not sure about this Jesus thing. You're trying to figure that out. But all of us, we crave love. We're actually created for this. One of the things that God teaches you is that this isn't just something you kind of want. You're actually created to be loved. And so it's built into us. Now, for those of us who've stepped into a relationship with Jesus, we realize that this takes on increased significance because the one commandment that Jesus gives to us is he says, I want for you to love one another, and I want for you to love one another the way that I've loved you. And not just that, but as we've said multiple times throughout the series, John 13:35, by this everyone will know you are my disciples if you love one another. This is our defining characteristic. So this becomes really significant to us. We have to figure out, okay, how do we do this well? And so we've been walking through this. Now again, I'll say this every week. This is a principles conversation, not an examples conversation. You don't go to one passage in Scripture, and this is the dating passage, and this walks you through how to date and what this should look like. No, it takes a little more work than that. You've got to look at, okay, what has God taught us about love? And then how does that impact the way that we engage this thing called dating? And we've talked about being satisfied single. I'm receiving from him. I'm loving those around me. I'm not completed by them. I'm completed by him. And then, as we talked about last week, I throw myself into community and into the mission, into my purpose, and I'm looking around and I'm watching for, okay, who's also doing that? Who's also pursuing God in this way? Who's also passionate about loving people this way? And that's the who. But then this week we get to the how. And it's amazing to me how bad we are at this. It really is. It blows my mind. I'll have conversations with individuals, and we'll talk through the beginning parts of this, and they'll be doing exactly what I'm talking about. They'll throw themselves into it, and they'll say, man, I noticed so-and-so. I feel like they really love well, and they'll ask me, what do I do next? I say, will you ask them out? They're like, whoa. How do I do that? It really does, it surprises me, but it has everything to do with what you see in that song. It has everything to do with what we think a date is supposed to look like, has everything to do with what we think a date is. And I think when you look at some of the truths and principles that God's taught us in Scripture, it should change that, which should change the way that we engage or look at asking someone out. Now, let's walk through this together. I'm going to walk through, I think, 5 different principles and truths today. And I'm going to start with one thing that we've talked about over and over again, but I want to reiterate this because when you look at the how, I think this really should speak to how this starts. So, number one, as we walk through this today, is just this idea of community. Again, so you need to, principle 1, start in community. This isn't really a principle, it's just a truth that we've learned as we've walked out of the last few weeks. We've seen the importance of community in terms of our relationship with God. We've seen the importance of community in terms of seeing how other people love. But it really does need to start in community. And what I mean by that is this, is when you start to date, it shouldn't be, hey, would you like to go out with me? It should be, would you like to hang out with us? Now, if you have healthy community, you have a community that you can invite them into or that you can step into with someone else. Hopefully, you've already been looking for and identifying, because part of the who was someone who has healthy community. And so maybe it's you stepping in to hang out with them. It's not a me, you thing. It's a you, us thing. It's a me, you, in terms of their community thing, and you want to be able to have them experience community, and you want for you to be able to experience their community. Now, we're going to talk about why this should not be such a big deal as we continue to move through it. But sometimes I'll say that to people, and they'll say, I don't want to introduce them to them until I know that I'm serious about them. Well, first of all, we've already seen it's really hard to be able to see. It's really hard to see whether or not people can love if they're not inside a community. And number 2, community is one of your best tools in being able to actually identify whether or not this is someone that you should continue to pursue. Now, the funny thing about this is I'll oftentimes meet couples, and not only have they not engaged the other person's community, they hate the other person's community. And I'll be doing weddings, and she won't even talk to any of his friends. It's not just that she doesn't like them. It's not just that she doesn't know them. She despises them. It's incredible to me. Or he doesn't like any of her friends. This should be one of the reasons why this is important is you should pay very close attention if you don't connect with their community. That should be a red flag. And if they don't connect with yours, that should be a red flag. What is it? Why is it that I find so much in common with these people and they don't at all? What's causing that disconnect? Because it does. I don't understand how they do it. How you walk into a wedding, you're like, you know what, we're going to get married. It's going to be the best day of my life. And I'm going to be looking at the one that I'm committed to. And behind them will be everyone I hate. That seems like a dream come true. But you should pay attention to that and their community because, one, their community is going to shape them. Their community is going to shape them. This is true of all of us. Proverbs teaches us. It teaches us, no. The companion of fools suffers harm. It says, walk with the wise and become wise, for a companion of fools suffers harm. What I love about this passage is that it doesn't say they might suffer harm. It doesn't say they're at risk of suffering harms. It says they will. This is a promise from Scripture. A companion of fools will suffer harm. If you're dating someone and you look at their companion and you say, man, they are all fools. I don't want anything to do with them. You are in trouble. You are in trouble. And so the question of community is actually fairly significant. And it should start there as you invite them into your community, and then you're able to see, okay, are they pursuing God this way? Do they love this way? And your community is able to see that as well. It starts there. And when we talk about this idea of a companion, let me just say this really quickly, because he's talking about the people that we're close to, which you would think are the people that you'd invite to be in the wedding with you. But either way, he's talking about the people that we're close to. All of us have those high school friends that are acquaintances still, and we know they're fools, right? We're not talking, and some of them you need to let go, right? You know that. You just need to let go. But we're talking about companions. Who's their actual community? Who is it that is influencing them? Who is it that they're spending the most time with? How should not be, hey, let's go out, you and me. How should be, how do we engage one another? How do I engage your community? How do I invite you into my community? Because inside a community, we're able to see what it is that we're looking for. And so it begins with community. Now, for those of you who are married, let me speak to this for just a second. I didn't do this as well last week as I would have liked to, because all these principles, they speak both to those who are dating and also to those who are married. One of the things that happens when, and I see this happen in marriages a lot, when you don't like the other person's community, or when you step into a relationship with someone and they don't like your community, oftentimes what happens in marriages is that they become all of community for each other. Because they either fight about their community the entire time, or they completely disengage it. So I find couples all the time that it's just the two of them, and they don't have any community because they left that when they got married. And maybe it's because they didn't prioritize it like we talked about in week 1, or maybe it's because their spouse didn't like their community, and so therefore all of that gets cut off, and it is super unhealthy. We talk about this week, it's super unhealthy for you to be all of someone else's community. And so you need to prioritize building this. As a couple, you need to prioritize building this, that you have a community as a couple, not just as individuals, but as a couple, you have a community, which means that you're going to have to ask people out too. Which means you're going to have to invite people. Hey, we're having dinner Tuesday night. Why don't you guys come on? And you're going to have to begin to build that as well. It's really, really important. And so it starts inside a community. And whether it's someone that I'm in community with or whether I'm engaging, inviting them into community, it starts there. And then principle 2 is this. Your value isn't found in their acceptance. Galatians 4:7 says, so you are no longer a slave, but God's child. And since you are his child, God has also made you an heir. Listen, you are an heir to the king. You are a child of God. This is who you are. This is what shapes you. This is your identity. That is so incredibly important because it speaks to this principle. Your value is found here. It's not found in whether or not they're going to say yes. It's not found in whether or not they're going to say yes. And I have so many conversations with people, and I'll say, you just need to ask them out. And they'll say, I don't think I can do that. I mean, what if they say no? Who cares if they say no? I love how my dad did this in my life because every single time I would mention a girl to him, he'd be like, oh, she seems pretty cool. He'd be like, you're going to ask her out? You should ask her out. You should ask her out. I'm like, I'm not going to ask her out. She's going to say no. Do you know who she is? There's no way she'd say yes to me. She's going to say no. He's like, you should ask her out. How do you know? You never know. Maybe she'll say yes. You should ask her out. I was like, I'm 16 years old, Dad. I'm too young to start dating. What are you doing? He's like, you should ask her out. You should ask her out. And then for 2 weeks, he would hound me. Did you ask her out yet? Did you ask her out yet? Did you ask her out yet? No, Dad, I'm a failure, all right? I didn't ask her out. Did you ask her out yet? Did you ask her out yet? Constantly. And I didn't understand it till later. But one of the things that he was trying to develop in my life, he was trying to change the way that I thought about asking someone out. And he was trying to make sure that I didn't begin to find my identity in whether or not she said yes or no. He wanted me to experience the no's and realize that they didn't define me. He wanted that to happen. Because this is so significant in so many areas of life. But one of the ways that you get to really experience this, and one of the tools that where you can really grow in this is in this area of dating. When you ask someone out and they say, no, I'm not really interested, or they look at you and say, you're kind of ugly. I don't think that we're going to do this. But hopefully that doesn't happen. But if it does, you can come back to this and say, no, my value isn't found there. My identity isn't found there. It's found in him. And so therefore, I can ask them out. So application of this principle. Ask people out that you know will say no. Now, you're like, whoa, wait a second. That I know will say no? Yeah. You don't manage idols, you rip them out. If you have an idol of value and acceptance and the other person saying yes, rip it out. Rip it out so that it doesn't keep you from pursuing someone when you find someone who's really valuable. If you allow it to exist, it'll hold you back. It'll hold you back. Don't wait. It doesn't speak to your identity. Now, for those of you who are married, I'm going to talk about this in a different way. And maybe you're in a relationship, and maybe your marriage has come to the point where you actually have to understand this principle and You have to look at your identity being found in him in order to be able to ask them out on a date. Hopefully you're not there. Hopefully you can ask them on a date without you being nervous about how they're going to respond. But that's not typically where I see this show up inside of relationships. Where I see this show up inside of marriage relationships is in asking the other person or in initiating intimacy. And the couple will be in the midst of a fight, or something will happen, and all of a sudden intimacy comes off the table. And it's amazing. I'll have conversations with people, and it will be months since they initiated intimacy because they're so worried about being rejected. And it so impacts their identity. It's not where your identity is found. Your value and your identity is set. You don't have to worry about that. Initiate. And part of love is initiating that with your spouse. And by the way, men, as God calls us to be leaders in the home, that means you go first. To be able to say, no, I'm not. My identity is not found in that. So even if I'm rejected, I know that, no, that's not. And so I'm going to seek to love. I'm going to seek to initiate. This principle of identity, it shows up in so many different places, but it should drastically impact the way that we date. I'm not hesitating to ask them out. I'm not worried. I'm not scared of how that is going to impact or what that says about me. And then principle number 3 is this. Romantic relationships are an extension of an existing relationship. So we oftentimes think about romantic relationships as this category outside of existing relationships. So I have my friends, and then I have this romantic relationship, and I'm pursuing a romantic relationship. I had a conversation with an individual the other day, and they said, I don't know what this series has for me. I just hang out with my friends. I mean, who am I going to date? I said, well, your friends. They said, well, date my friends. I would never date my friends. So, well, that's exactly who you should date. Now, you shouldn't do it like the TV show Friends, because you shouldn't sleep with your friends, but you should date your friends. And this should be something that builds on an existing relationship. And the reality is that as we're on this journey, as it pertains to those who are followers of Jesus, the reality is that you already have a relationship with them. Listen to what 1 Timothy says. It says, do not rebuke. Paul's writing to Timothy about how to be able to engage those around him. He says, this is the way you should look at individuals and the relationship that you have with them. Do not rebuke an older man harshly, but exhort him as if he were your father. Treat younger men as brothers, older women as mothers, and younger women as sisters with absolute purity. He says, no, you have to understand, you have relationships with these people. And the dating relationship, even when he talks to husbands and wives, when God's speaking to them, even when you look at Ephesians 5 that we looked at recently, 1 Peter talks about this as well. He says, you should engage one another, understanding that inside of the family of God, you have a relationship to one another. And romantic relationships are not this other category of relationship. No, romantic relationships are something that builds on an already existing relationship and should be a continuation of that relationship. And it shouldn't be that you pursue one at the exclusion of the other. And so this idea that, well, I have my friends over here, and here's my friend circle, and then there's a couple of things that I find oftentimes keep us from being able to date healthy inside of our community in particular. One of them is just complete foolishness. And that is where people say to me, they say, listen, I don't date people I go to church with. And I hear this all the time. I said, okay, that's just foolish. I'm just going to call it what it is. That's foolish. So what you're basically saying is, I'm inside of this community, and inside of this community, I can see whether or not someone is actually pursuing God. I can see whether or not people actually love, whether they're working to love people well. Inside of this community, I can see all that, but I don't date those people. I date strangers. That's logical. That makes complete sense, doesn't it? No, that doesn't make any sense at all. It doesn't make any sense at all, but I hear it all the time. Even the romantic relationship should spring from that existing relationship that God calls us to have with those around us. And so even if you're engaging someone who's outside of the community, you're inviting them into the community, and the first relationship that you're building is the friendship relationship. The first relationship that you're building is a relationship that God says you already have with them. It's from that the romantic relationship is built, that it grows. It starts with that existing relationship. And so this shouldn't be a big deal. But dating, it becomes this big deal. It's amazing. I mean, you go back to the song, and it's raining, and I love to be rained on with you. And then the reason why I love that song in particular is the way that she says it at the end. She says, and it's just like the start of the movie. And we have this idea that dating it's going to be like the start of the movie. And we're going to go on the first date. And the Notebook begins. It's the start of the movie. And that's what we think the date is supposed to look like. That's what we look for and pay attention to this. That's how we evaluate the date to determine whether or not we're going to continue this process. It drives me crazy. I'll have conversations with someone, they'll have gone on a date and say, how did the date go? There's no sparks. Sparks? What exactly are sparks? Did you expect it to be a Disney date? Were there fireworks? Like, what do you mean there's no sparks? But we put all of this into it. It's like this different kind of relationship, and it's this different thing where we're not getting to know someone. Now we're pursuing a romantic relationship, and so it's going to be this different setting, and we're going to engage one another differently. And this is why I love how Anthony says this, because Anthony says when you date someone, you don't actually meet them at the beginning. For the first 3 months, you just meet their representative. And it's so true, because we've made it into this thing, and it's got to be the start of a movie. And I know I'm not going to star in a movie, so I got to send my representative to be able to be there, and everything's going to be great, and we're going to go to this great place, and it's going to be this big deal, and because why? Because we got to create sparks. If there's no sparks, there's not going to be a date too. And so we try to facilitate this, we try to manipulate this, and we try to create this. And at the end of it, you know what you don't actually accomplish? You don't get to know each other better at all. Why? Because you didn't show up. You sent your representative. But there were sparks. Great. Try to recreate Disney dating for the rest of your marriage. Good luck. Good luck. Because those sparks are the result of nerves. Those sparks are the result of hormones. Those sparks are the result of all these different things. And if you think that's what love is, good luck having a marriage that lasts. Let me ask you really quickly, what do you expect on a first date? What do you expect? Don't answer out loud, but think through it. Some of you were tempted, and then it was going to get awkward, so I just decided to throw it out there. What do you expect for it to look like? You know what I almost never hear after a first date that I wish I would? How'd the date go? And did you know that they did work in Africa for a year? Did you know? Did you know about this thing they do at work during lunchtime? Did you know that they've been working with True Mentors for, did you know? What if the expectation of the first date was that you actually got to know the other person a little better? What if that was the win? That you came back and, you know a little better about how they're pursuing God, or you know a little better about how they're working to love other people. We've got to change the way that we look at this. It's got to stop being this big production deal, this different kind of relationship. It needs to be an extension of a previously existing, a relationship that we're building, a friendship. And even with those that we don't know, we're bringing them into community, building that friendship, relationship, and then it begins to build from there. And from there, we get to know one another. From there, we build a relationship. Not a production. That's something that can last. And so I think when you look at this, the reality is that when you understand that, we should make dating more common, not less, as you get to know your community. Go ahead and bring up that slide. Make dating more common, not less, as you get to know your community. This should be a natural part of our community. A natural part of our community. We're building those relationships. We're getting to know one another. I see that in someone else, and so I asked them out. Now, let me talk about one other thing that ruins this, and this is really destructive. And you need to pay attention to this because John kind of mentioned it earlier when he was joking, but one of the things that ruins this is expectations and what it is that you're attracted to. And guys, you need to pay very close attention to your Instagram feed. Because it's amazing to me how many of you are moving past women who are pursuing God really well. And you're moving past women who are loving the people around them really well. But because of your Instagram feed and because of what you allow yourself to be entertained by, you've become attracted to individuals who spend their life in the gym so that they can take pictures of themselves in the mirror. You don't want to be married to that person, but you've become attracted to them. And you're moving past the individuals that you could actually have a lasting, loving relationship with because you're moving past what actually matters and what should be valuable. And you need to decide that that's going to change. And those are the ones that you should ask out to get to know better. And I see the same thing happening with girls. And you have this dream and expectation, and you're going to meet the guy, and you're going to have the American dream, and you're going to have all of this. Sometimes I say this to couples, and it's a little hard to hear. Say this to individuals, it's a little hard to hear. Guys, you're not Brad Pitt, okay? And you just need to realize that. And girls, you're not Jennifer Aniston or whoever else you want to throw in there. Somebody like, Jennifer Aniston, who's that? I know I'm old. But you need to change what it is that you value most importantly. And some of you are moving past phenomenal people, incredible people, because you value the wrong thing and you have the wrong dream. We live in community, we see that, we value what's most valuable, and we don't make a big deal of it. You just ask them out, just get to know them. It should be more common, not less common inside of our community. Now, in order for this to not become destructive, you have to pay attention to principle 4. Connect intimacy to commitment. 2 Timothy 2:22 says this, flee the evil desires of youth and pursue righteousness, faith, love, and peace, along with those who call on the Lord out of a pure heart. He says, listen, he says, don't give in to your youthful desires and lusts. He says, no, flee that. And one of the things that God consistently teaches us, if you go back to our love conversation, restoring relationships last year, we talked about this over and over again. The commitment, the way that God calls us to connect, commitment and intimacy. It's so important. It's so important. And one of the reasons why we can't date inside of our communities, and one of the reasons why dating has been so destructive is because we have consistently ignored God on this. You cannot disconnect commitment and intimacy. And so God says, listen, you step into that, you ask them out, you have no commitment. You have no commitment. So there should be absolutely no intimacy. No intimacy. It's funny to me because sometimes I'll have conversations with people. I say, you need to connect commitment to intimacy. And they'll say, no, I 100% agree. I will not sleep with them on the first date. I'm like, I don't think we're on the same page. Like, let's back that up a long way. A long way. I think God says, no, you're not going to be sexually intimate until you're married. That's what God teaches us. Listen to me. God's not trying to hold out on you. God's not trying to rob you. He didn't give his son for you, give everything to pursue you and bring you home because he wants to hold out on you. He's not trying for you to experience less. He's trying for you to experience something that's full and meaningful that lasts. So he says, connect intimacy with commitment. That means, man, there's not the physical aspects way down the road. Even when it comes, you go back to that song, first date, he's going to kiss me in the car. No, we got a lot of time to get to know one another before we get there. And by the way, when we talk about commitment, we're not talking about moving in together. We're talking about being married. And, there's been a couple of people who are like, no, I know, we need to commit. We're moving in together. No, that's not a commitment. A commitment is marriage. And one of the reasons why moving in together actually fail, marriages of individuals who move in together before they get married, do you know this? They fail at a higher rate, not a lower rate. Because a big part of loving the people around us is exercising self-control. There you go. Lighten the mood. But we've got to tie the two together. And this is not just as it pertains to physical things. This also has to do with how we speak to the other person. And it also has to do with emotional things. So my dad taught me this once in a very unique way because I was dating this girl, and I was in 6th grade, really mature. And she had been telling me that she loves me, of course. And I had been telling her thank you, which doesn't go that well. I'm sure maybe you've experienced that. Doesn't go that well. But I remember I was outside of school one day, and I decided today's the day. Today's the day. I'm going to make her day. I'm going to tell her I love her too, and this is going to be amazing. And yeah, I was kind of an idiot. But I remember sitting there, and give you a little context. So my family owned a conversion van. Do you guys know what a conversion van is? Show of hands, really quickly, right? Yeah, look it up. They're massive, giant, and ugly. But conversion vans, they have these two side doors that open, and then they've got all these bucket seats and stuff in there. And I remember I was outside the school, and she came up to me and she said, I'll see you tomorrow, love you. I said, I love you too. And I was so looking forward to the look on her face, but I never got to see it. Never saw the look on her face. Because the second I spoke the words, I felt something grab the back of my shirt. And the van was about 6 feet back from where I was standing. And I just remember feeling the hand on the back of the shirt. And the next thing I know, I hit the wall on the other side of the van. I don't think my feet touched the ground the entire time. Something grabbed the back of my shirt, and then, bam, I hit the other side of the van. I look back to the doors as I'm being kidnapped. And I see my dad there with this look of death on his face. And he slams the door shut. And he gets in the car, and he is mad. He's not just a little mad. He is livid. I've never seen him this mad in my life. He's so mad. You know when you're so mad you can't talk? Like there were a couple times when he started to talk. Like you could see from his face, he's going to start to talk. He couldn't talk. He couldn't even get it out. He's so mad. And I'm sitting there thinking, what did I do? And I'm scouring the last week in my mind. I'm thinking back like, okay, what would have happened? Did something happen in school? What in the world happened? And I remember we got home and he sent my sisters out. He's just like, get out of the car. Chris, you stay. I was like, oh man, this is really bad. And he sat there quietly for several minutes, and I'm thinking, it's over. Like it's been a good 12 years. Like, it's over. I know Jesus, so I'm okay. I know where I'll be, but it's over. And then he turned around and he looked at me, and he said, Chris, or Christopher, he said, when you're ready to do for someone what your grandfather does for your grandmother, you can tell them you love them. Now, little backstory. I'd never seen my grandmother walk. She has severe MS. And my grandfather used to wake up every morning and he would go into their room. It was too painful for them to sleep in the same bed, so he would go into their room and get her up and shower her and then take her to the living room and get things ready for her for the day. He'd go to work, he'd come back at lunch and make her lunch, and then he'd go back to work and come back afterwards and make her dinner, and they'd typically sit out on the deck and talk for a little while, and then he'd get her ready for bed and put her to bed. For 12 years, I'd watched him do that every day. Every day. And my dad says, when you're ready to do that for someone, then you can tell them that you love them. Intimacy also has to do with emotion. And connecting emotional intimacy with commitment is important too. And some of you are sloppy with what you tell people emotionally. And as we walk through this and I say date more, one of the things that I do know is that I've seen individuals date a lot and they leave a trail behind them because they emotionally engage people at a level that you shouldn't because you're not committed to them. And you hurt them. No. That's not love. That's not love. And whether it's physical or emotional, you should tie that to commitment. And at the beginning, this is not, because in the culture, the date, the song, It's physically intimate. It's emotionally engaging. It's all of these things. It's first date. What are you doing? No. We got to get rid of that. We got to get rid of that. No, we're getting to know one another better, and it builds on that. And then principle 5, and this is the one where I think if you take this seriously, it will allow you to move from destructive dating to actually productive dating. And that is this: you're responsible for them spiritually. Ephesians 4 says this: Instead, speaking the truth in love, we will grow to become, in every respect, the mature body of him who is the head, that is Christ. From him, the whole body, joined and held together by every supporting ligament, grows and builds itself up in love as each part does its work. This is your goal inside of dating, that we grow and build each other up inside of love. You are responsible for them spiritually. And whether or not they are moving towards God because of the fact that you're dating or moving away from him. Whether they're following him better or whether they're not. All of us are responsible for each other, to help one another grow and to build each other up. And when we move into this and say, this isn't the production, we're getting to know one another better. And how do we step into one another's lives? How do we get to know each other better? How do we build each other up? How do we encourage each other? How do we help each other follow God? How do we help each other know God better? If that's our perspective, dating doesn't have to be destructive. It can be a life-giving, community-building experience. But we have to allow it to be shaped by what it is that he's taught us. Will you pray with me? Father, as we move through this, I pray that we would, first of all, that we would know. I mean, we know this. We see what you've done for us. We see how you've loved us. That we would know that you're not trying to hold out on us. You're not trying to keep us from love. You're not trying to keep us from joy. You're not trying to keep us from the fullness of life. No, that's what you want for us. And I pray that we'd trust you in that. You've gone so far to show us that. It shouldn't be hard for us to trust you in that, but it is at times. And I pray that now that we would trust you in that we would decide to engage this differently. And ultimately, through all of it, that we would take responsibility for one another spiritually, whether that's in a marriage relationship, whether that's a dating relationship, that in everything we do, that it would help to grow and build us up, each other up in love. In Jesus' name.